everybody, as promised, I am making beef jerky for the field, and I thought I'd do a video, show you how I make my beef jerky. I need a bowl to put this crap in. We'll use this bowl. Okay, so I bought a 1.5 pound plus sirloin steak this weekend. It's a locally raised steak from Miles City, Montana, so still like several hours drive away, but a Montana product. So I don't eat commercially, industrially produced meats, so this will suffice. And actually, I'm trying to remember the last time I actually ate beef. It might be like 2+ decades. It's been a while. So normally when I make jerky, I have venison or elk or something like that, but we are fresh out, so sirloin it is. I thawed it because it was frozen, and then I put it back in the freezer for about 2 hours this morning to make it easier to slice into, thin strips. And then it'll just kind of marinate over the next day or so, or whenever I have time to pound it into really thin strips and then dehydrate it. So here we go. So I'm trying to cut this into as thin pieces as possible. And I'm cutting across the grain. And I'm also going to use a meat tenderizer in my marinade to help kind of soften this up a little more. Because sirloin can be a little tough since it's not a real fatty meat, which is exactly what I wanted for jerky. I did not want something that was real fatty. I've got everything sliced up. The meat, most of it is about 1/4 inch or less in thickness. Okay, so let's make the marinade. So this is a teriyaki marinade that I'm making, and I found the recipe online. It's called Doc's Best, I think. And I've made it once before with jerky, and I really like it. And since I like the teriyaki flavor, I'm just gonna stick with it. So the first thing we start with is soy sauce. As you can see, like, I have hardly any soy sauce in here. Actually, there's more than I thought. So I'm gonna be okay. Yay, because I need 1/4 cup, and I know I don't have 1/4 cup's worth here. So I found a bunch of soy sauce packets in the fridge, and so this is number 5, but I think I'll save it because I have enough here. So 4 should give me, it's not quite 1/4 cup, but it's a little over 1/8 of a cup. So each one of these packets is not quite a tablespoon, probably like a 1/2 tablespoon almost. So I'm just gonna measure here. Oh yes, look at that. With like a little bit to spare. Sweet. Okay, soy sauce, in we go. And then we need some Worcestershire sauce. And I actually looked up how to pronounce this today because I was curious. Nobody knows how to pronounce this, and everyone says it differently. But I looked it up. You can go to Rachel's English, I believe. She has a YouTube channel, and she talks about the history of Worcester, which is a town in England, and Shire, not Shire, but Shire, which is equivalent to our counties in the US, like New Hampshire. That's where that comes from. So it's Worcestershire. So anyway, if you want to know more about that, go visit Rachel's English, and she'll tell you all about it. Okay, so I need, let's see, so 1/4 cup of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire, and 2 tablespoons of liquid smoke. So I normally don't use this stuff, but I have it, so obviously I have used it in the past. But this recipe calls for a teaspoon of paprika. I inadvertently grabbed smoked paprika, which I'm cool with, because my thought was, oh, if I had smoked paprika, I could cut back on the amount of this. Well, I ended up grabbing it anyway. So this calls for 2 tablespoons of liquid smoke. I don't even think I have 2 tablespoons anyway, but I'm gonna do about, well, it's gonna turn out to be about 1. I was gonna do 3/4 of a tablespoon, but whatever. I'm sure it'll be fine. But since I already have the smoked paprika, I really don't need the extra smoky flavor. And I need 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. So I don't buy brown sugar anymore. I just make it myself. What? You don't know how to make brown sugar? Well, let me show you. It's very easy. Okay, so I pulled out about 2 tablespoons of just regular granulated sugar. We're gonna toss this in there. And all you need to make it brown sugar is the molasses. That's all brown sugar is molasses mixed in with granulated sugar. So I'm just gonna use, I'm out of spoons, they're in the dishwasher. So I'm just gonna swirl a fork in here and pick up, I don't know, it's like a teaspoon. And it doesn't really matter. I never measure out when I make my brown sugar. You just don't want to add too much molasses unless you really love the flavor of molasses. And just a little stir, get that molasses to dissolve. 2 teaspoons of salt, which, let's see, that's not salt. This is salt, so I've already measured it out. This is actually really coarse salt. But it'll dissolve overnight while it's in here. So I'll give it a good little stir, let it dissolve, and then I'll stir my meat while it's marinating once or twice, and it'll be fine. And let's see, a teaspoon of ground black pepper and a teaspoon of meat tenderizer, onion powder, garlic powder, and smoked paprika. You can use regular, just use more liquid smoke. Oh, we want all of the onion powder in there. All right, we're gonna stir this together with a whisk. And because I like my things just a little bit spicy, I'm also gonna throw in some red pepper flakes. Oh, this smells really good. So I'm not going to measure out, but I'm going to do about a teaspoon. That's close enough. Give it just a little extra zing. This is not in the original recipe. It's just something I like to add. And then make sure you stir it up well. And we're going to pour it over our meat. And I'm gonna grab, I love these things. They're awesome. I'm just gonna give everything a toss. Make sure all the pieces are coated with the marinade. Maybe all this down here licking your chops. I did pull off a few fatty pieces. I'm gonna give those to her here in a minute. That will be her lunch treat today. She's gonna pop this in the fridge. I'm going to work. And then when I get home from work, I'll give it another little toss, and then we'll let it sit overnight. And then in the morning, I'll come back and pound it out a little bit and then place it in the food dehydrator and let it dehydrate for like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 hours. So this is the beginning of my beef jerky. And I have plenty of time to get it done before I leave for the field this weekend. So that's it. All right, I will see you tomorrow. Hello everyone, it is the next day. So I let these pieces of jerky meat marinate overnight, so it's been about 24 hours they've been marinating, so they should be good and saturated and all sorts of good flavor. I think they're gonna be awesome. So the way I like to do this is I just take a piece of plastic wrap, lay it out on the counter, and I'll lay my pieces of meat on the counter as well, and then I'll cover it with an additional piece of plastic wrap. And if you have a meat pounder, you can use that. I don't have one because I don't eat a ton of meat, but I have found in the past that a rolling pin works just fine, and you don't beat the pieces of meat with the rolling pin. You just kind of lay it on there and crush them and then roll gently. And because the meat tenderizer has been working for a long time to break down these muscle fibers in the meat, it will actually work pretty well. So if you don't have a meat pounder, I don't even know what those things are called. Probably not meat pounders though. A rolling pin should work just fine. And you don't want to put these right next to the edge of your plastic wrap, or you will get juices and things oozing out of the side, and you don't want that. So I'm gonna go ahead and lay these out, and then I'll rotate the camera a little bit so you can see what all's going on. It's really not that exciting, but I figure I'll show you anyway, just my technique. So I'm going to put maybe 6 or 7 pieces on here. Oh, let's go 8. Why not? And then my top piece of plastic wrap. Smash it down. Wash the fingers. Okay, you can see that my kitchen is still a little messy, but that's all right. I'm in the process of packing up for field work, packing up for moving, putting all my stuff in storage, yada, yada, yada. So yeah, just take the rolling pin and kind of rub it and crush it along. And you can see that these pieces will start to flatten out a little bit. And you don't have to get them paper thin. An 1/8 inch should be plenty fine. And some of these were already pretty thin. Some of them are a little thicker. And so you might need to work those pieces a little more firmly with the rolling pin. Because if you leave them too thick, they definitely won't dehydrate properly. And you definitely want to make sure that you get everything nice and dry. Yeah, you definitely don't want to run the risk of introducing any chance of bacteria having any sort of condition to just run with it. Oh, that's crushing down nicely. And sometimes you get a nice satisfying little crunch sound and feel to it as you're working this rolling pin. So in making beef jerky or venison jerky or any kind of jerky, this is probably the most labor intensive part, and it's really not that labor intensive. Jerky making is just a time intensive process because you have to let the meat marinate, and then once you do that, then you just roll it out, and then you have to let it dehydrate. So there's a bit of a wait time here. So here's about as thick as it is. This is probably close to an 1/8 inch. And then I've got my dehydrating trays here. I'm just gonna lay them out. And you don't have to leave a ton of space between these. You don't want them touching. You do want some space between your pieces of jerky, but you don't have to really leave them spaced out because you're gonna dehydrate this on whatever setting your dehydrator says you need for jerky. If you don't have a food dehydrator, and I'm gonna have to set this down, peel this off, you can do this in an oven. If your oven temperature will go as low as 160, and I think most do these days. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to have a food dehydrator. You can definitely use a conventional oven. Okay, so there's the first 8 pieces or so. Let's set this back over here. I'm definitely gonna need an additional tray or 2. I have 2 set out, but I think I'm gonna need more than that. So go ahead and pull my additional pieces of meat out of here. So I like to go one direction, then turn the rolling pin perpendicular and take it another way. So here's my first tray. Move to my second tray. So this is my Nesco food dehydrator. It's probably 20 years old. It has an old-fashioned dial that you just rotate the temperature to. So the temperature range is 95 degrees Fahrenheit to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. It is also a jerky maker, so the 155 degrees is what you're supposed to run the dehydrator at for making jerky. And of course you can see I had to untangle my cords here before I could plug it in. So there's no on-off switch. You just plug it in and the fan comes on. And I'm gonna let it run while I'm at work this afternoon. So it runs for about 6 hours and then I'll come back and I should have some beef jerky. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Looky, looky, we have jerky. So this ran for about 6 hours, and as you can see, some of the smaller pieces are a little brittle, but still jerky worthy. You just have to let them soften up a little bit. But they have a good flavor. They're nice and dry. So some of these are still just like ever so slightly flexy, but most of them are really quite dry and will break in half if you go ahead and flex them. I'm gonna eat this last piece. So this will be good stuff for me to take to the field this weekend. I'm gonna be gone for 3 weeks. So excited. I have jerky to sustain me during my trainings and field work. So there we go. 4 trays of jerky. Easy peasy. Really not a lot of hands-on. Just mainly time to marinate, time to dehydrate, and then voila, magic happens and you have jerky. It's pretty awesome. So if you get an opportunity to make yourself some jerky, I highly recommend it because whew, it's got a little kick to it from those red pepper flakes I put in there. I like it. Okay. Well, I think my next video is going to be, I promised my bar babes, an hour-long bar workout before I leave so that while I'm gone, if they want to do a bar workout, they have an option. So I'm going to try to do that later this week in all the spare time that I have between packing and trying to finish up selecting field sites and getting everything downloaded to GPS and all that stuff. Plus I have to do trainings before my training. I love that. Okay, time to go. I have things to do. Go make yourself some jerky and see you whenever I see you. Ciao.